We cannot expect to be performing at a high level if we're pretending not to deal with the things that are really going on in our lives.
Absolutely.
And so I know we've got a lot of listeners who are like, okay, so how do I take that step? And to hear someone say, hey, you don't have to be an expert to actually make an impact. Welcome to the Hope in Real Life podcast with Jason Gore. Our team is passionate and committed to bringing you more hope in the everyday, real areas of your life. If this conversation and content is valuable for you, please do us a favor. Like, subscribe, and even share. You never know how valuable it could be to share a little bit of hope with someone else. Let's get the conversation started. Well, what's going on, Hope in Real Life family? We're here with another episode of Hope in Real Life. Here at this podcast, we have an entire team of people that have designated the best hours of their day to helping our audience, our listeners, find hope in the everyday moments of their real lives. This week, we are talking about a topic that a lot of our listeners have actually inquired about, and it's this idea of faith in the workplace. And every single week, every single episode, I try to at least give us a foundational statement to know here's what we're operating around. And this week, it's this idea that spiritual health is a vital part of hope in our lives, and hope is needed in the workplace. And so I'm here this week with Adam Price and Doug Morgan, who are a part of the leadership team of a company called Mako Medical. And just to give you a quick background, Fortune 500 fastest growing company list, Triangle Business Journal Fast 50 award for 3 years in a row, which I don't believe any other company has ever done. I think 2 might be the limit prior to these guys. But let's just start out here in a little bit about you all. And Adam, I know you're one of the founding members of Mako Medical. So why don't we start with you? Why don't you just give us a little bit of background about yourself?
Yeah, thanks for having us. So we started in 2014, so full reference laboratory. So if you want to think high level of like who our competitors would be, it'd be like a LabCorp request. So we test everything under the sun from blood, urine, toxicology testing, genetics testing. So we're a local lab. So we're in Raleigh, North Carolina. We do have a lab in Henderson, North Carolina, but we are a full service lab. So we service national hospitals, clinics, different doctors around the U.S.
Okay. All right. Doug?
Yeah. So I came to Mako about a year and a half ago after the big COVID boom, which I'm sure we'll talk about a little bit, because a new growth strategy got our CEO and COO, Chad and Josh, focused outside the business, on the business, not so much in the business. Yep. And so they needed some leadership, boots on the ground leadership, and they really wanted the culture post-COVID to go in an exciting and new direction. So I came on board about a year and a half ago.
Yeah, and just for some context, I know your company really took off during that COVID season. And so can you just shed a little bit of light on what that exactly means and what happened to really bring that into fruition?
Yeah, I mean, so when COVID hit, I think it was a race to who could service the need, which was testing, right? Luckily, we were positioned to do that. So our COVID growth personnel-wise, we went from about 300 to close to 2,000 people within 6 months. So, wow. I mean, I don't think there was a day or a minute where we weren't either running samples as a team or trying to hire people. So just a fast and furious pace during COVID to get us positioned to do what we needed to do. Because at that time, if you weren't getting your samples or your results back in a couple days, people were looking for another lab.
That's
so
right.
Everybody was in a sense of desperation to know if they had COVID or not. So luckily, we were one of the highest performers in the nation by able to push results back to customers and patients, and became one of the fastest growing COVID labs in the nation during that time.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, in a moment, I mean, obviously our topic is faith in the workplace, right? Not lab results and that type of thing, though. But I want to start out. So in a minute, I'm going to ask you, like, hey, what makes you guys experts on this idea of faith in the workplace? Why should we have you on the podcast talking about this? Now, I know the answer to that question, but for our audience. But before we get into that, can you just give just a little bit of why behind Mako Medical? A lot of different things that you guys could have done as founding team members. Like, what made you jump into this, and what's the why behind the organization overall?
Yeah, I'll start, and then you could kind of pick me up where I mess up.
I'm used to that.
Yeah, okay. So when we started, I think the goal was, Chad, our CEO, didn't have a science background, right? There was a very good business person, but no science background. So we didn't have the what quite figured out. So, but the one thing that I think Chad brought to the company that instilled in us as founders was the why. So when we started company, there was 3 things we really wanted to focus on. And we led with those versus saying, let's figure out what and how we're going to test or all those things, or payer contracts, or all the things that make running a lab very, very difficult that probably would have steered us away from this business in the beginning. But leading with the why really helped us to focus on, like, why are we doing this? Like, because, it's not just about a job or testing. It's not the most glorious business. Running lab samples isn't. So the why we started was three real big reasons. One, we wanted to give back to the local community and actually live that out through our giving and time. Obviously, when we were a small company, we spent a lot of that through our time with how we gave back to the community. That changed a little bit during COVID with how we were able to financially support different ministries, outreaches, and programs like that. So the community aspect was huge. I remember, funniest thing, we were doing a Raleigh Christmas parade before our lab even processed one sample. We were doing like community events before. And I remember the funniest thing, but it was cool when people used to see us and they'd be like, hey, I've seen you, because we have a big shark logo. They'd be like, hey, I've seen you at this community event. And they had no clue what we did as a company. And that was really special because it meant that we were having that impact. The second thing, which is kind of what I spearheaded, was the veteran piece. So we really wanted to dive into hiring military veterans and living that out. So at that time, I was running a lot of our operations, and my kind of goal was I wanted to only hire military vets. So I was in the Army for about 13 years total. Got out, was told, man, when you get out of the military, it's going to be the easiest thing. You're going to find all these big jobs. They're going to pay you. Combat veteran, like, they're going to love you. I got out, like, it was crickets. I mean, and my strategy was off. I didn't understand the importance of networking and all those things. I would come home, my wife was like, hey, why are you playing video games again? I'm like, I applied for 35 jobs that day. Like, I'm not getting callbacks, but I applied for a ton of jobs. So I went through that transition and understood that veterans had a lot of good things to offer as far as discipline and a sense of teamwork and a sense of getting the mission done, right? And in the lab world, there's no like, hey, it's snowing, we can't go pick up samples. Like, no, we make it happen, right? So hiring a team full of veterans, I think our logistics team, which was primarily where we started, we had 100% of our team was veterans for the first 4 or 5 years. And now you fast forward, we've been in business now close to 10 years, and we still hold about 70% of our veteran-based team on our logistics department is veterans. So really cool there. And it's allowed us to really plug into different veteran community-based events as well, which is awesome. And then the third thing, obviously, it's just the biggest thing for us was our faith component. So at that time, we wanted to lead with faith and the workplace. Being a private company gave us the ability to do that, but that was something that was important. And how that's lived out, and we'll talk about that probably later, but initially it was really small. So initially what it looked like was a small Bible study with 4 or 5 people. I mean, that was it. And then it was just trying to take some of those principles that are in the Bible and say, okay, how can we lead the company based off of some of those, right? And we knew that if we started the business with those 3 things, and that's what became important, except for the bottom line, except for profit, except for growth and expansion, then no matter kind of what the business threw at us, we were kind of grounded in those 3 things. So that's kind of the why behind what we started Mako for.
Yeah, Adam, I appreciate that. Yeah. And what's interesting, if you take 1 and 3 off the list that you just gave, give back to the local community, and 3, driven by a faith component, I think, man, you sound more like a church than a company. I would expect you to sound like that's on the Fortune 500 fastest growing list. So I would say, well done, man. I appreciate you guys' desire to stay true to that. And then on the veteran piece as well, thank you for your service.
Yeah, absolutely, man.
And man,
awesome.
I'm thankful for that. Doug, let me ask you this. So that's kind of the why behind the company, right? Yeah. And so you get the faith component. And so for our listeners, for our audience, what makes you all the experts in this conversation on faith in the workplace?
That's actually a really easy question to answer. We are not the expert. So I'm sorry, disappoint y'all, maybe cut off the podcast, but we're so not the expert. It's interesting as I think about my own life and I think about Chad's life, that was the beginning. It was awesome that was the why in the beginning. But like in my own life, I used to separate faith and work. I'm talking like it was so opposite sides of the spectrum, especially growing up in the South here, like you went to church on Sunday and then the rest of the week was all about me and my profession. And then, story for another day, but then God got a hold of me and showed me how much my faith actually needed to fuel my work.
Yeah.
But that same story happened to our CEO, to happen to Adam's brother, Chad. And during COVID, right before this company blew up, he really gave his life to Christ. He became a Christian, and kind of walking away from that cultural, just know the language and have some of the ways in which you choose on some days to live that way, and really gave his life to Christ. And that's actually when we met each other. We were buddies for about a year. And so just after that, God got a hold of his heart about what this why is a beautiful foundation, but what does it look like to take it to the next level? And that's when he asked me to come and work alongside a bunch of these great leaders for that to be true. So we are not the expert. Yeah. We are we're getting things wrong. We're figuring out the real why behind what it means to be a faith-driven company. And it's really surprising some of the ways we're seeing what God wants us to do there.
Yeah, I think this is so important, and I think I appreciate your honesty. In our pre-production meeting, you said that. I was like, man, that's perfect. I think it's probably what our listeners need to hear, because the reality is we live in a difficult world to bring our faith into the workplace specifically. And I know a lot of our listeners probably aren't Christian. Sure. But we're all looking for hope in our lives. But man, right now, it's not necessarily the safest place to talk about your faith in the workplace. When you just look at the media and you see things going on around us. But we do know, we said this at the beginning, we do know that spiritual health is a vital part of our hope. And that's not a Christian belief. You can go to a secular psychiatrist, you can go have a secular professional coach, and they're going to tell you, if you don't engage the spiritual side of your life, you're not going to maximize what your true potential really is. And so you hear that. And so we know it's a vital part of our hope. And man, hope is needed in the workplace. If we're giving our best hours of our days to the workplace, we cannot expect to be performing at a high level if we're pretending not to deal with the things that are really going on in our lives.
Absolutely.
And so I know we've got a lot of listeners who are like, okay, so how do I take that step? And to hear someone say, hey, you don't have to be an expert to actually make an impact.
Let's take a break from this episode of Hope in Real Life to tell you about our mobile app. If you're looking for a resource on personal development and spiritual enrichment, then we've got just the thing for you. The Hope in Real Life mobile app is a free tool made specifically for our listeners and anyone who needs a little hope in their everyday life. The Hope in Real Life app offers multiple features like daily devotions, parenting tip, financial resources, marriage insights, and a community where you can share prayer requests. Stay tuned as we will be making this resource available to you in early January. Tomorrow can be better than today, and hope is possible even in real life. Now back to the program.
We do have a program that we're really focusing on right now. That's a component of it, and that's called Rise Up. And so I would love for you just to share with our listeners a little bit about what that looks like right now, maybe how it started and the impact that you're seeing from it.
Yeah, so when COVID, 300 to 2,000 people, you realize really quickly that I don't know any of these people that I used to know.
Can you just say that again? I mean, you said 200 to 2,000.
300 to 2,000.
Yeah, roughly overnight.
It felt, oh gosh, felt like a lot of overnights for a lot of us. But we had to constantly keep churning to keep up with the need. I mean, I just remember seeing just samples just stacked up I was looking for a sled to sled down them. It was crazy. But, it was one of those things where I think we realized that in the midst of the chaos of being so busy, that faith side that I was saying, that one of the reasons we didn't want to lose our eyes on the company, those Bible studies started to dwindle, right? They never grew, same 3 or 4 or 5 people. We'd often catch ourselves doing it with the door closed, right? And we started realizing, they got all these people walking by. And the one thing we all have in common is we all have problems. We all have things we're going through, right? And when you have 300 people, you got that, you expand that to 2,000, those are a lot more problems, right? And a lot more things that no matter where your faith is, you're going through it, right? Whether it's a bad relationship, whether it's financials, whether it's a death, it's something that somebody's going through. So I think that was one of our things we realized with the beginning of Rise Up, was that how do we cast a larger net, right? How do we get more people and connect with them on a relationship level so they can kind of see hope, right? Because at that time, we're so busy. someone comes to talk to you, like, man, listen, I love to talk, but I don't have time, right? Yeah. And the reality is we turn that into our everyday. Even if we're not at the height of a pandemic, we still do that. We're all just so busy now that we forget to spend real time with people. So the great thing about Rise Up was it allowed this platform, and we, like Doug said, we didn't have this stuff figured out. We just knew we wanted to do something to kind of bring people together, right? And so the idea was, hey, let's take something, any topic that somebody's dealing with. So I think our first one was leadership. Then we rolled into living your best life. We've done one on finances, on stress, depression, anxiety, things that every single person in the world deals with. And we would bring in a outside speaker, and the thought behind that was, hey, listen, this guy talking to you or this girl talking to you, they may connect with you better, and also they're not going to say something that later down the road you're going to not be able to separate that when we said that in Rise Up versus now you won't come talk to me because maybe I said something that you didn't agree with or anything.
Saw something negative on your performance appraisal.
Exactly. So we made it optional, right? Which was a big part of kind of just navigating through those unknown waters of like, hey, who do we want to come to this? Well, anybody could come to it. Doesn't matter if you have faith. If you don't have faith, come on down, right? We provided food for everybody, so that way it became a social setting where we could all just kind of hang out. It's 30 minutes. We didn't make it long. We didn't want to make it this long, drawn-out thing. 30 minutes, direct to the point. We'd ask the speaker to come in for 3 weeks and just pick a subject. Pick a subject, and whatever your heart's leading you, go for it, right? And obviously we wanted that practical application and then some biblical application too, because we knew that if they just led so heavily with biblical stuff that it's going to fly over people's head, right? So we wanted there to be, but we didn't moderate how much of 60% biblical, 40% practical, which has been so cool to see the progression of. We've been doing Rise Up now. I think we just finished our 14th session this past Wednesday, yesterday. And it's been so cool to see how different speakers will take a topic and open up, whether with their testimony or something that they're going through in their life, and instantly these connections start being made with our people that are down there. So Rise Up, yeah, we've been doing it, and it's just been awesome to see God use that as an overflow to bring people down there and just go to work. I mean, it's cool. It's been a really fun thing to be a part of, and we're gonna keep going. And what we've realized through this past year and some changes, that this model could be replicated in any small business, any business. It's just you got to start somewhere, and we haven't figured it all out. We're still tweaking. We're still figuring it out. So we're going to keep doing it and keep kind of building on what we got going on. So,
I applaud you for recognizing that you can get so busy that you can lose sight of what's most important. And again, for you to tell me what the 3 whys are for your company, and for you not to mention the bottom line, at the beginning, because I can tell you, one of my roles in my hours that I'm awake during the week is to serve as the lead pastor for Hope Community Church. And I can tell you, and this, I'm almost ashamed to say this, but it's doesn't do me any good to not be honest. We can get so busy on a church staff that we can actually forget to invest in ourselves in the right ways. Sure. And so we have to set aside intentional time every week for staff meeting. And I tell you what I've found is you can program all you want to, and those are great. But usually the first half of every staff meeting is like wins, celebrations, what's going on. And people can get up and talk about what's going on in their ministry or what's going on in their life and ask for prayer.
Yeah.
And those times where someone just asks for prayer and people come up, and then when you see God answer prayers and you celebrate it, those unplanned moments that we set aside are more powerful than anything and more beneficial than just about everything that we program. But you've got to stay committed to it, or otherwise you're right, man. You can program your time to focus on your spiritual life right out of your schedule.
Oh, yeah.
So well done there. So that's the program side, right? That's Rise Up, and we can come back to that in a minute. But it was interesting, and I think, Doug, it was you that was talking before, like, hey, Rise Up is important.
Yeah.
But you've got the program, but if you really care about this, you've also got a relational component with your employees. Yeah. And while the program's important, the relational side might even be more important. Yeah. Can you talk about that?
Absolutely. So you just talked about, how you can sometimes get distracted by the programs and focused. I came in a year and a half ago, and it was my mind, my dreams, all programs, all these awesome things we're going to do. And I'm not saying they're not going to be a part of what happens, but I quickly learned, I feel like God quickly taught me that people don't want to hear about programs and external giving and generosity and ideas and ministry. They actually want to know that they're cared for relationally, authentically. Yeah. And so it was like all these great ideas I had were, you know what? It's, God was like, it's all about making the Mako team, the Mako family, the Mako team members, the number one mission. And you talked about profits too. By the way, when you do those things right, profits come, and profits fuel those ministry things. Like we couldn't host Rise Up, pay for lunch, bring speakers in and do that without profits. So you don't throw profits out the window. Right. But when you actually really put people first, profits come. But yeah, so it is, I learned quickly that it was about relationships. People are hungry. I think especially, I said this before, but especially in the South. And I grew up going to church and had an intellectual understanding of God and Jesus, but like I didn't become a Christian until I was 29, and that's a story for another day. But the people are hungry for hope, and they're hungry for that hope to be authentic and their faith to be authentic. And so these big boardroom meetings or posters on the wall, they can mean something, but people want to see it lived out in truth. And I think what are the number one complaints probably of non-Christians, of Christians, are they're hypocrites.
Right.
And by the way, yeah, we're hypocrites, right? We're sinners. We're right there. But it's because of the way we talk and we don't act that way. I feel like if we acted more like Jesus, we would have a opportunity to speak more about him. And so we've learned that lesson. Relationships come first, caring for people comes first, and these programs are genuine overflow. And people know when it's fake. Yeah. People know. I've seen too many things in Rise Up that were real, and it was because there was a real care. It was authentic, and then it, obviously God is the one who fills that void, but we kind of held their hand on the walk there.
Yeah, just kind of piggybacking on that, and I so appreciate, because our listeners need to hear that regularly, and be reminded of that, whether they are a Christian or they're not. Yeah. Those of us that say we are Christians, we're still imperfect. But we do have a responsibility to do our best to live as Jesus would call us to live. Absolutely. But and along those lines, you said, because I'm sure there's some of our listeners that might hear this. Maybe they're business owners, maybe they're business leaders, maybe they're entrepreneurs and their company's growing. And they want their company or their industry or their team to be faith-based, but they've got these thoughts, man. But there are some liabilities, there are some concerns, and one of the ones that you mentioned was, what if there's this sense of this quid pro quo type idea of, well, if somebody comes to my Bible study or to my program, then maybe they have a leg up over somebody else on the team. And you had something really unique to say that.
So I think that does exist in some ways. People, man, I know my motives are all jacked up. I'm always having to correct and pray through my motives. Just the other day, I was texting to pray for someone, and I felt like God was like, "You're doing that, so they know you're praying for them." I'm like, man, I am such an imperfect guy. But so the funny answer to that is, for me, when I find out someone is a genuine Christian, on the leadership team, for example. We talk about our faith, we share it, and I come to find out, man, this person really is, living for God. I actually hold them so much more accountable to a new standard. There is not the favoritism club. If anything, they are going to have to live to a new expectation of what it is to love in truth and love. Because leadership's hard, right? So some people all just want to be. It's all about performance. It's all about just here's the feedback, but it's got to be done in love. And then some people just don't want to say those hard things and just care and be compassionate, but it's both. And Jesus totally modeled that better than anybody. He spoke truth to those people, but never let them accept a lesser version of who he knew they could be. And so he would say, hey, no, I don't condemn you, but go and sin no more, and those. So it's one of those things where I actually, there is definitely no favorite club. If you thought that, you're going to be sorely misunderstood once you come, because I'm going to hold you more accountable for living more like Jesus, which is a hard thing to do.
Yeah. So many things I feel like we could talk about right now, but I want to make sure that we have time to hit this. So if we've got an audience member, a listener who's thinking, okay, I know that spiritual health is a vital part of hope. We need more hope in our lives, and we know that hope is desperately needed in the workplace. So I want to take an action step. Mm-hmm. What could that look like? What's a simple action step that somebody can take away? They don't have to be an expert, but they can actually take that first 1 or 2 steps towards bringing this to life.
I'd say, first off, if it's better for them to admit they're not an expert first, and then it'll probably go better. But I would just say God is at work in the triangle. He's at work in our world, right? He's doing the work, and it's us to notice where he's working and come alongside. So the quickest, the first thing I'd say is, hey, ask God to show you where he's at work. Yeah. Like, where is he? Whose life is he at work in? We had one single mom at Mako who you could just tell there was a lot of tension and it was hard and she was having to balance a lot of different things. You could just tell she was hungry for some support. And so someone's eyes and heart were open to that. She came to Rise Up and she got the support from some folks, some team members and coworkers there. And the story is pretty amazing of how she's opened up to the Lord and is doing incredibly well after it was just a need that was met. So I would say, one, ask God to open your eyes, spiritual eyes, to see where he's at work. That's the first one. Be willing to be bold, but with gentleness. Yeah. Because people, if it's not going to be authentic, then don't do it. I actually would rather you do nothing than to do something that wasn't authentic, because that is not what the world is hungry for. Or in a way where you seem like a jerk. 100%. Or even just, that you're all about, we lose sight. We all want formulas. Like, that's man's problem, right? We all want a formula. And so we want these formulas instead of doing the hard work, which is, daily seeking out, to see where God's at work and coming alongside and being interrupted. So that'd be the beginning point for me.
I just think it's, before you even get to the point of like trying to develop a program, which I think you can do. And I think Doug's right. I don't think you should like constantly delay, like when we fix this or when we get to this phase, then we'll do a Rise Up or a Rise Up type program. But I do think one of the things, especially for leadership, that you have to constantly analyze is like, are you loving people? Like, are you truly investing in a relationship? Because at the end of the day, people that come down for Rise Up, right? Like, if we didn't have that relationship there, and I said, hey man, we're about to do Rise Up, cool. They're not coming. They might come grab some free food, but they're going to go right back up to their desk. So I think we have to, it's so easy to talk about, but man, we just get so busy. And it's like, I remind my guys underneath me, I'm like, you got to be aware of like your body language. Like, is your door closed or is your door open? Like, when people come in, are you on your phone or you're off your phone? Like, those little things are those little things that are either going to stop a relationship from growing, or they're going to allow it to flourish and grow into something. And then as it grows, you start to realize there's that common ground. There's, hey, oh wait, you're going through this? Well, I went through this. Let me show you how I navigated it, right? And then it makes going to Rise Up or a program even easier, because now you have buy-in, because people, they don't see it as this like heavy push of the gospel in my face. They see it as like real people talking about real things. But the beautiful thing is, when they get in there, all the speakers, they all point it right back to Jesus, right? The hope of all of those problems points right back to Christ, which is a beautiful thing.
So this is what I'm hearing. If I'm taking notes, I'm hearing what are some steps? One, or maybe these are values to carry. Mm-hmm. One, I'm hearing people over programs. Two, I'm hearing look to God for what he's already doing. And then third, let's be bold, but do so with gentleness. Yeah. The Bible says, I think it's 1 Peter 3:15, it says, be ready to have a reason for the hope that you have. But it also tells us to do so with gentleness and respect. So, gentlemen, I appreciate your time, man. I'm so grateful for what you're doing already and for how you really are. You're making the Triangle a better place. You are bringing hope to the Triangle, not just in your workplace, but the way you're investing in the community. I'd normally try to ask two questions. I know we want to wrap up here around 30 minutes, but two quick questions. First, what are you most excited about in your life right now? And Doug, maybe we'll hit you with this one.
Yeah, sure. So I got a 16-year-old son, junior. We just went on a bunch of college tours. And for him to see him kind of step out in faith on his own and think through, okay, this is a decision, this is a big decision, and God has a plan for me. And for him to be talking about like that he's praying about things or seeking where God may be at work that he's calling to him to at 16, as you think about launching him out into the world. Just the fact that he'd be hungry to see how God wants to speak into where he goes to college and how I can maybe start taking sideline coach role, which in some ways is hard for dad to admit that I need to do that, but sideline and watch him to pursue that's really exciting. So loving it.
And then Adam asked this question, 5 years from now, What do you see? What do you look out with hope-filled eyes and see in front of you?
There's a couple things for me. One, like I would love to see Rise Up kind of take plant in other businesses in the Triangle, because I think what's building, right, this network of speakers, some of the logistical things that anyone would have to work through, like we've kind of worked through some of those things and we're learning through the way. So I think just seeing that other business leaders saying, you know what, I want to do that. I'm going to do it, and maybe I do it at a small level, but I'm going to step out. I want to try something like that. So, seeing that rise ups in other business would be a really cool thing. Because I know, like, all of our speakers have been so excited about it, and they always tell people, and they bring people, and they come back and see us. So I know they would love to pour into other businesses that are doing it. And then one way that I'd love to add to this, shameless plug here.
To have my hair?
No, not your hair. Is I'm opening a business, a family entertainment business in Wendell. We're working on all the build out right now and going through this. And one of the most exciting things for me going through this now by myself is like I'm looking at those principles of how a business is built. And it's so cool to me to know that I don't have to wait for year 9 to build like a Rise Up type program. Right. Like that's a day one thing. And I got these speakers like already that I have relationships with that are probably super excited to come and help, and it's going to be awesome because, we may not have the 60, 70, 80 people in attendance at Mako. We may have 4 or 5, but it's still going to be just as powerful and just as impactful. So super excited about that.
Well, listen, you said that you would like to see this Rise Up build out. This whole episode is around faith in the workplace. And so I'm going to go out on a limb and put you guys on the spot. If you agree to do this after we press stop on the record, we'll have some type of contact info down in the
100%.
Show notes where our listeners could reach out to you, maybe get some ideas.
We'd love to be a resource for people. Absolutely. Yeah.
Okay. Well, to our listeners, thank you all for tuning in this week. Again, spiritual health is a vital part of having hope in our everyday moments in our real life, and hope is desperately needed in the workplace. I hope this has been valuable for you and how you can apply these principles to your life. And if this has been valuable, please do anything that you can do, like, subscribe, and share this content with somebody else that you work with. Maybe you guys can partner together to bring a little bit more faith in the place where you spend the majority of your time, sun up to sundown. We love you guys. Look forward to seeing you on the next episode of Hope in Real Life. Gentlemen, thanks for being with us.
Thanks, man.
Thanks for having us.
Thanks for tuning in to this episode of the Hope in Real Life podcast. If this content was valuable for you, don't forget, like, subscribe, share. You never know how important it could be to bring a little hope into someone else's life. There's even a place here for you to comment. We would love to hear from you and hear your feedback. Until next time, let's keep sharing hope.
Hey, Hope in Real Life family, real quick before you go, we want to invite you to celebrate the true meaning of Christmas at one of our family-friendly Christmas Eve services. Join us at Hope Community Church, where we will have 20 services between December 21st and December 24th across 5 campuses in and around the Raleigh-Durham metro area, aka the Triangle. Each service will feature carols, candles, cocoa, and all the Christmas cheer. Bring your kids, your friends, or your coworker, or even the single mom down the street, or the guy next door. We could all use a little hope for Christmas. Let us know you are coming by visiting gethope.net/Christmas and grabbing free tickets. One more time, that URL is gethope.net/Christmas, or you can click the link in the description. If you can't make it in person, we'd love for you to join us at gethope.tv. Merry Christmas.